You're tuned in to Ask the Master Auto Technician. Car questions? Get answers right now. Call 850-763-0555.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah!
All right, good morning, everybody. This is round 2 of our Tuesday morning show. I was reading in today's paper where the Chevy Bolt, B-O-L-T, not the Volt, the Bolt was #1, and the cars out there being sold in America, and it's an electric car. What's the neat thing about it is it has a 238-mile range between charges. That means I don't know very many people that travel that far a day, but that's how long. And it takes 1 hour for every 25 miles to charge up at 240 volts. If you're charging it off your dryer vent at the house, excuse me, the plug-in that you hook up your dryer, 240 volt power supply. If I'm not mistaken, yeah. It takes for every 1 hour charging, it's lithium-ion batteries, they get 25 miles.
So you would say 10-hour charge for 250 miles?
Yeah, 10-hour charge, or when you come home at night, put the car on when you come home and let it charge up. Next morning it's ready to go. After that would be 238 mile. If you drove it 238 miles, the full range, and then came home and parked it, it would be ready to go the next day for 238 miles, if not further. But they say it's 238 miles per charge. Now remember, this is estimated, depending on the temperature, depending on how you're driving, depending on a lot of variables out there. Is it hilly? Is it flat land? Is it what's going on? So in reality, just say 200. I mean, that's probably the safest bet. That way you have enough room to get home, and you're not marginally compromising yourself and having a dead battery, and you have to have it towed to get it charged back up. But it's pretty impressive that we've come from cars that believe it or not, electric cars have been around for over 100 years. People don't realize one of the first cars made out there was an electric car. Electric cars were a lot easier to make than internal combustion engine cars. They were all they had to do, they had batteries, and they pretty much the same concept. Of course, they didn't have regenerative braking back then. They didn't have the digital computerized electronics that we have now, so everything was much bigger and analog, and just wasn't very efficient. They weren't cheap either. They were expensive back at the turn of the century, and they're still expensive, but the amazing thing is they've come down in price. Give an example, a Tesla S, which is an electric car, when it came out, I think it was around $100,000. Now they got the Chevrolet Bolt, B-O-L-T, that's going for $30,000 by the time you get all the government rebates and all the things that go with it. I really don't understand why the government's getting involved in that, but still, but they are. But that's an electric car. But a lot of people say, oh, electric car is great for the environment. Well, yeah, I really wouldn't say that, because think about this. Where do you get the lithium-ion batteries that come from in Canada? They come from the nickel, where they harvest or mine the ore to make the batteries are made in Canada. Then they take the ore and they send it to China, because China has very, very lax EPA laws. China makes the batteries. They send the batteries back to the United States to be put into cars, or they send them to Japan to be put into Toyota, whatever they may be. But the point being is, this is one Earth here, but yet we pollute one part of the Earth and think it's not affecting us. But it does affect us. But remember, electric cars are really coal-powered cars. They're running off electricity. You're putting it in to your electricity at night to charge it up. Unless you've got a solar generating station at your house and you're charging it during the day, you're going to actually be running your car off of either coal or natural gas, because that's how most of today's power is created in America. We have some that's created off of nuclear power. We have some that's from hydroelectric, such as dams. But most of our power that's generated in America comes from coal or comes from natural gas. I think most of the coal generating plants are shutting down. Thanks to the Obama administration, I think we've been shutting down, I think, about 2 a week. And if I'm not 2 a week or 2 a month, the only thing I know is also that China is opening up coal-powered plants at 2 a week. So I don't really understand. This is one Earth. We breathe the same air, but yet we send our pollution overseas to be done, and it's like it's not going to affect us, but it does affect us. Hey, sometimes I just wonder about the insanity of all this. But electric cars are kind of neat, though. People say, are electric cars going to make me obsolete, my business? Well, in a way, they will, because we won't be changing or repairing engines. You know, pretty much hybrid cars right now, there's not too much to do to hybrids other than change tires, check alignments, rotate tires. Maybe you might have a belt on a hybrid car that might need to be changed. Fluids may need to be changed occasionally. But other than that, they're pretty darn dependable. I have a Toyota Prius, and I think the biggest expense I put on it one time is I didn't really need to change the battery, the big battery inside there. It was getting questionable. It was about 10 years old, but I decided to change it anyway. I said, I need to see how this is done. I said, I can get a good price on the battery and get a factory rebuilt one from Toyota. Let's put it in here. Let's see what's involved to do it. I need to be able to do this if a customer comes in on these Toyotas, you know, which they have, to be able to do it. So we changed the battery in. Not a hard job at all. Not very expensive. Cheaper than most cars that put in transmissions. Cheaper than most cars. You know, if you have a truck or a car that needs a transmission, you'll pay more to have a transmission rebuilt than you'll have to put a hybrid battery in. Honest to goodness. It runs about $2,000 to $3,000, about $3,000 I should say, to put in a hybrid battery, parts, labor, whole ball of wax. And they're good for 150, 250,000 miles, depending on how you drive the car. A lot of variables, where you live, how hot it is, how cold it is. But what I've seen on Prius is they got 150, 200,000 miles, they're still got good batteries in them. Very rarely do they go bad. I think we're up to generation 1, which 2000 to 2003, then generation 2 from 2004 to 2009, and generation 3 from 2010 to 2015. And now we're up to Gen 4, which is 2016 to present. So they've come a long way, and Toyota has actually set the standard on what it looks like to have a hybrid car or an electric car. Well, take a look at even the Chevy Bolt. It looks like a Prius. If you look at it, have you noticed how all the electric cars or the hybrid cars all look the same? The reason they do is because that is the most wind efficient, you know, going through the wind that there is. That design, that rounded design right there with the swoop back, is pretty much how the most efficiently you can drive a car with the less wind resistance. That's what you're trying to do. Once you get past, on a hybrid car, I want to say once you get past 48, 50 miles an hour, it takes more energy. You know, you can get less fuel mileage. If you keep it around 48 to 50 miles to an hour, you can probably get about 50 to 52 miles to a gallon. You really can, because I've gone from here to Fort Walton on my Prius and got 58 miles to a gallon. I filled it up, went to Fort Walton, came back, filled it up again, averaged out 58 miles to a gallon. Same pump, same car, same everything. I said, wow, that's pretty impressive, but I kept the speed around about 50 miles an hour. Now, if I take this same car and do 70 miles an hour on the same road and come back, I'll be lucky to get 45 miles to a gallon an hour. So the faster you go, the more fuel you use. But remember, that's on a hybrid. Internal combustion engine is used to assist the electric motor. But we're talking about a Chevrolet Bolt, B-O-L-T. That's a fully electric vehicle. It's just like the Tesla S, fully electric vehicle. There's a lot of electric cars. You got the the Nissan Leaf that came out a few years ago. It only had a range of about 100 miles before needing to be charged. It's been out about 4, maybe 5 years right now. I don't know. I haven't heard much about it. I don't know how well it's done. I know that most people, most entities that have bought the Nissan Leaf are municipalities, such where they need small cars to check things out, to work around, to do meter readings or whatever they are, and that's who is getting them. And they're not actually buying them; they're leasing them. So I really can't tell you how well the Nissan Leaf has turned out. I haven't done much studying on it, and I can't tell you much about the Chevrolet Volt or the Chevrolet Bolt, the B-O-L-T or the V-O-L-T. I do know that the Volt, they made it, then they stopped making it for 1 year, and then they made it again, brought it back again in 2017, I think this year, and they made it about 500 pounds lighter. And I think that's what they did, but they may be replacing it now with the Chevrolet Bolt. I have no idea. Only thing I know is that it's new technology out there, and cars need to be repaired, and technicians need to stay on top of it, and technicians will go to school to learn how to do all the custom creature features on there that people like blind spot avoidance. If that goes out, you're going to get a warning that's going to need to be repaired. A lot of times we don't have rear mirrors on cars anymore. People go, what? Why do we not have rear view mirrors? We have cameras. And so when you're looking at that rear view mirror, you're not looking at a mirror, you're looking at a camera screen of what's actually happening behind you. And that way your kids can be in the back seat, you know, jumping up and down, and it doesn't affect your view. So that's another thing that's coming out. They go bad. Things will have to be repaired on them. Alignments, well, you know, you'll knock the alignments out. Tires need to have air put in them. Tires will need to be changed. The tire pressure monitoring systems that are built into the wheels for the tires, they will go bad. There's always going to be maintenance to be done on any vehicle out there. People are always going to be knocking them into poles, or there's always going to be body work that needs to be done. There's always going to be something done that man makes, man can tear up, or it will go bad. And so my industry will survive. We will change. We've changed from, well, originally we started out as blacksmiths. Think about this. At the turn of the century, the mechanic became a blacksmith became a mechanic. You know, he's the only place that worked on wheels and axle grease and things like that. So here, all of a sudden, the horseless carriage came in there, and the guy was going, I've never worked on one of these. I need to figure this out. Next thing you know, he's working on it, rebuilding them. Rebuilding the engines, repairing them. Things evolved, and he went from a blacksmith to a mechanic. And then the mechanic went from turning nuts and bolts and wrenches and internal combustion engine all the way up to when the 80s came out. Then we got into electronics, and now we're mechanics and we're electronic engineers. And I don't know about the engineer part, but we have to understand how electronics work. We have to understand how 12 volts gets from point A to point B. We have to understand how all this works together. And it's pretty amazing. And when we're talking about hybrid cars, you're talking about high voltage. You're talking about 500 volts. Yeah, pretty incredible out there. And you need to learn how to run a wave pattern and see what's going on and see what's happening, because these cars are not like your cars of yesteryear. I mean, I bought a Prius where I could understand how to work them. I had people make fun of me. Why you buy a Prius? Well, I want to understand how they work on them. Do you know how they work on them? No. Well, why don't you try working on them? I've never seen one. Well, why's that? Because they don't break. That's why, because they work very, very well. They stay on the road for years and years and years and need very, very little maintenance. About the only thing I know that a Prius needs that they don't have in the owner's manual is recommended for you to change the spark plugs every 30,000 miles. They don't even have a spark plug recommendation on the Prius. I wish they did, but they didn't have one. I figured they have it at 60,000, 100,000. Not even there. There's no recommendation anywhere for them. But what I have found out, if you change the spark plugs every 30,000 miles on these bad boys, they really get pretty darn good gas mileage. You can be pushing 50 miles to a gallon here in town driving. You can get around 50 miles to a gallon. If you have a cylinder that's slightly misfiring, it really affects your fuel mileage. That's what I had out of 4 cylinders. I had one cylinder, I think, that was slightly misfiring when it first cranked up. Dropped the fuel mileage from around 50 miles to a gallon down to about 44 miles to a gallon, just because of a little misfire that didn't even turn the check engine light on. But my wife pointed it out to me. She said, is your car misfiring when it cranks up? Or because sometimes the engine runs, sometimes it doesn't. And when the engine's not running and all of a sudden it starts up again, she felt a little miss, just a slight 1 or 2 little bumps. And I said, yeah, I think you're right. I just hadn't paid any attention to it. Sure enough, put my equipment on there, and you could see that it was misfiring. Change the spark plugs, solve the problem. And since that time, we've been recommending to most Prius owners to change their spark plugs every 30,000 miles. And just about everyone says what a difference that makes. Hey, this is James Morris. We'll talk to y'all tomorrow morning. Give us a call. If you got a car question or want to be a part of the show, we'll be right back tomorrow morning. Bye-bye, everybody.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.